We'll move on to our final presentation of our session together now, where my Omdia colleague, research practice leader, Adrian Ho, is going to talk to us a little bit about the importance of greater broadband investment from a demand perspective, and also leveraging some World Broadband Association custom survey data from a study that we conducted earlier this year, where we surveyed 75 operators, 75 enterprises from around the world. And that's what we'll take a look at in this final presentation. Adrian.
Thank you everyone for staying for this last presentation. I know it's not easy, it's 4 p.m. Anyway, I'm Adrian. I'm based out of South Africa as well. I'm the practice leader for digital enterprise services. Now, topic for today, I've been in this industry for 20 years. The topic today is the importance or the need for greater broadband investment. I feel I've been talking about it, I've been discussing this for the last 20 years as well. But somehow, as a consumer, I just find it very hard to understand why the ROI or the choice or the decision to make greater broadband investment difficult. I mean, digitization, it was rightly pointed out in the panel, is applications driven, and without which it is really nothing. And for the experience, for the effectiveness of those applications to work and to function, whether you are an enterprise or a consumer, the underlying platform will always be broadband driven. Now, as Mark has said, a lot of this part of this presentation comes from a survey we did with Omdia as well as Huawei as well as the World Broadband Federation. So, what's the demand of the ordinary citizen today? Now, I think the vast majority of us are very happy that we have COVID-19 behind us. But COVID-19 also changed the way we live, changed the way we interacted, changed the way we engage with customers, engage with each other. So this is a very simple question. How have we changed how have we changed our lives over the last 24 months as a result of COVID? 3 things really stood out. I think virtual working, remote working, the ability to work anywhere, anytime, any place. I think there's a realization, at least this belief, that today our work has become very virtual. There's also a change in lifestyle. I think there's a greater appreciation of a work-life balance. As a result, a lot of us are no longer working the 4 corners of an office. I think some of our surveys have shown something like 1/3 to 40% of employees are now outside an office at any one time. So the importance, the fundamental importance of having ubiquitous broadband becomes very important, so that that employee is able to execute his job anywhere, anytime, any place in the same effectiveness as he or she would have back in an office place. The second thing we realize, I think everyone, that we engage very differently today. I know a lot of people who have never gone online shopping before or engaged with customer service in an online platform, whether it's a chat or whether it's an email. They used to do it by phone. That has changed as well. The way businesses engage with customers have changed. So the whole online digital experience become very pivotal. It's a crucial battleground, customer engagement. It is very important because it is the way we decide and do things today. Thirdly, the way we entertain ourselves, online gaming, online streaming has taken off during the pandemic, whether you are a Netflix watcher, whether you're a BritBox watcher, whether you're Amazon Prime, whether you game, whether you're a gamer. The consumption, the usage literally soared over the last 2.5 years. And lastly, looking to the future, we are definitely in an era of a very aging population, especially in certain parts of the world. The whole concept of remote healthcare, assisted living will become a reality sooner than expected. So the world has changed over the last 2.5 years. The importance of broadband in enabling a lot of these applications become more pivotal than ever. That's from a consumer standpoint. Now, from an enterprise standpoint, we ask enterprises across the world a whole set of questions, whether you agree, disagree, or strongly agree with a whole set of statements. Now, 3 things really stood out. As I mentioned earlier, digitization is applications driven, without which it is nothing. more than 50% of enterprises, especially the large enterprises, clearly stated that they will increase broadband spending, or the need for reliable broadband is more important than ever because they want the applications needed to be supported to an optimal level. Secondly, work-life balance. I think there's a realization among many organizations to enable virtual working or a hybrid workforce, and that ability to provide that ubiquitous connectivity becomes more important than ever. That's from the enterprise. And the third thing that stood out was that businesses realize they need to have good IT capability to support their remote workers. The broadband infrastructure becomes more important than ever. Now, I think this topic was talked about in literally every single presentation today. There's definitely inequality in this world. I don't think we need to talk about it extensively again. What has been said throughout the day is that countries with more mature and more widespread broadband penetration has seemed to experience faster economic growth. They seem to be able to deliver that demographic dividend to the entire population. They're able to enable the workforce to be more productive. There's so many stats, either from ITU, OECD, and EIB that shows the ability to increase productivity when broadband penetration increase, the ability to demonstrate faster economic growth when broadband penetration increase. This is a snapshot of the global broadband penetration by region, by the speed of the connectivity as well. Not surprising, as we discussed this comprehensively throughout the day. Places like North America and Europe, broadband penetration is much higher, and these are the very regions that have experienced faster economic growth over the last 30 or 40 years. Now, the question has also been raised whether government should play a role. I think government, in theory, I'm not in favor and a strong advocate of government involvement because they usually mess things up. They usually don't operate in a more in an efficient way compared to the private sector. But when it comes to basic infrastructure, I think government has a role to play, especially with a strong government-private partnership. As you've seen in many countries across the world, especially in the country I come from, Singapore, whenever there's strong government-private partnership, it always enables strong infrastructure. And as a result, you get more rapid, stronger, robust economic growth. Now, the impact on telcos, providers, and beyond. I think the big question I talked about earlier as to why service providers has always struggled to produce or invest more in broadband is because of the ROI. And there was a lot of discussions today about innovative applications. As I mentioned earlier, digitization is about applications. Innovation will come from the application itself, and this is where monetization, return on investments will come from for the average service provider. Now, countries that have telcos that have experienced or have delivered faster broadband or more ubiquitous broadband, these are some of the distinctive benefits that they have derived. So you look from top to bottom, increase ARPU. Increase ARPU as a result of better applications, increase ARPU because of people willing to pay premium, consumers and businesses willing to pay premium to get faster broadband as opposed to broadband that is a little bit more shaky. That's one. Secondly, reduce churn. I've heard this many times as a consumer. If you are happy with the speed of the broadband, you're happy with the stability of the broadband, the chances of you moving to a different service provider, even for a lower price, is greatly reduced. So improve churn or reduce churn. Service providers like the one in Spain and Bell Canada have seen their churn rate reduce as a result of launching high-speed fiber services to both the metro areas as well to suburban areas as well. Reduce operational costs is one of them. And lastly, reduce energy consumption as well. Now, if you look at the chart on my right, increase broadband ARPU. This is how service providers can dramatically improve their overall revenue. A 5% increase in ARPU translates globally to $17 billion increment in overall broadband revenue. A 10% increase in ARPU translates to 34 billion, 20%, 68 billion. And a lot of that increase in ARPU, as we have discovered or experienced over the last decade, is a result of two things. People paying for value-added services. That's where the innovation comes into play. In services, we include a lot of it is applications, whether it's consumer-driven or enterprise-driven. And secondly, reduced churn, loyalty as a result. And as a result of that, service providers can implement increase in pricing, as we are seeing today as a result of inflation as well. Now, the next question is, we asked a whole set from a consumer standpoint. Now, this question came from a SME survey. The question was, we asked a whole set of questions to small and medium-sized businesses across the world. One of the questions we asked is, how would your spending or expenditure differ between 2022 to 2021 on a whole set of services and hardware products? So it ranges everything from cybersecurity, Wi-Fi management, network management, applications, and so on. Now, from the SME sector, that's anything below 250 employees. Broadband was the number one item or number one service whereby they will increase spending in 2022 over 2021. And the reasons for that many, and one of the main reasons that was stated is basically to support their remote workers or their virtual workforce, and secondly, to support the increasing amount of applications, both on-premise as well as cloud applications that SMEs are deploying globally and within their enterprise as well. Now, this is the current status of what we call the Fiber Development Index that Omdia has developed. I'm not going to go through each single line item, but basically the higher percentage it is, the more it's a reflection of how mature each of those categories are. So long story short, there's a lot of work to be done. There's only 62% of broadband penetration in 2021. Fiber to the premise is only 43% and so on. So as those results earlier shown, as you spread the broadband penetration globally, your ARPU increases. As a result of your ARPU increasing, your addressable market increases as well. So there's a lot of incentive for service providers to invest in broadband. So if you look on the chart on my left, there's been so much discussion over the last 10 years about how the network market is dying literally, and there's no longer any growth in networking service at all globally and even in emerging markets. In some ways that's true, but if you look at the chart on my left, broadband expenditure or services revenue is actually growing globally, but up to about 6% on an annual CAGR, as opposed to MPLS and private lease lines, which are declining. So overall market opportunity, addressable market globally for broadband is increasing. It is actually increasing quite rapidly in this part of the world. It's high single digits as opposed to low single digits or mid single digits in North America and in Europe. Now, so there's a lot of discussion, a lot of talk about why service providers are not gung-ho about putting more capital into increasing broadband infrastructure. Government has a role to play, as you mentioned before, return of investments, equity, and so on. So much discussion. We polled operators across the world, and these really are the main reasons as to why they won't put more money, or they struggle to justify putting more capital into broadband infrastructure. No surprise. Cost of deployment is one of them. It will be very hard for a lot of service providers to engage with private equity or any large financing company to get better terms. And that's why I think government has a role to play. Second factor is lack of information over location, and access to existing infrastructure. Second question we ask is what kind of important regulatory requirements, intervention is required or to be explored. Number one is reduction in regulatory barriers, and secondly, greater flexibility in partnership. I think greater flexibility in partnership will include both government as well as private sector, including all the big financial houses as well. So that really is the presentation for today. The final word is, I think, we'll sum up everything we discussed today. How can service providers actually justify increased broadband investment? It's really two things. I think it's innovation. Innovation will come from the application itself, whether you're reselling it or whether you're doing it organically. And I think this is one area whereby telcos have always not done well, is anything that's applications driven. And this is one area whereby building a partnership of ISVs, building that whole developer ecosystem becomes very important in the digital world, because digitization is about applications. And if you don't get that right, you will not get the whole, you will not thrive basically. So thank you very much.